Well, hello everyone. We're going to give it a couple more minutes like we normally do to um, probably to 9:03 Pacific, and that should we still got some people trickling in here, so that should give us enough time. So we'll be about 2 minutes. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get started. And first of all, thank you to everyone who's joining us this morning. Just some housekeeping items. I don't usually do these, so probably will forget something. But we will be sending out the recording. So for those of you that have people that are coming in late or miss part of it, you'll get the recording sent out to all the registrants. And then for those of you that have questions, you can type them in to the Q&A box. And if we don't get to those at the end, if we run out of time, we'll definitely follow up with you guys. One-on-one. So again, like I said, appreciate everybody for joining. Just wanted to give a little bit of background on this. You guys have probably a lot of you on the call, especially MCT clients, have probably heard some of my and MCT's webinars regarding some of the uncertainty around cash versus MBS delivery, and kind of what the PSPA announcements on January 14th of this year created. But look, just at a high level, ever since middle of January, kind of the subject of cash versus guarantor with respect to MBS on the or and MBS, has been a big topic. Just to remind everybody, for those of you that don't know, basically there is a 12-month limit being imposed on the cash window of a total of 1.5 billion. So when we think of this in the lender's perspective, we think of that at 250 million a month of conventional production. We get that by going 1.5 billion times two agencies divided by 12 months, get you 250 million a month. Now, where we've always come from on this is, while there was, well, frankly, the FHFA at the time and Treasury kind of, posed this as a large company, a large lender problem. We take a little bit of a different stance on that, in that, as number one, you can argue what 250 million a month in conventional production is with respect to large or a mid-sized lender, but also it indirectly affects all lenders because of the fact of how many, especially tier two smaller aggregators, relied heavily, on these cash window desks. So, definitely, a lot of our client base is interested in this. So we're real excited to have Freddie on the phone here to basically kind of go over some of the differences between cash and guarantor as it relates to Freddie Mac. So just to introduce the panelists here, as my marketing group told me, I'm just kind of the WD-40 here on the call. We've got three experts who are just going to go through some of the differences. I will speak to a little bit of the analysis that goes into analyzing cash versus MBS on the asset price, on the base price, and those differences. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Phil Rosori, a chief operating officer, and run hedging and technology for MCT. To discuss the servicing component, the changes in servicing, we have David Burris, who is our sales director for our MSR division. And then on the Freddie side, we have Sophie, who is the director of client education services, and Harvey Snyder, who is the senior director of single family pricing and analytics at Freddie Mac. And so with that, I'd like to kind of just go through the agenda here. We're basically just going to go over an overview that Harvey's going to take us through of cash versus guarantor. David's going to walk through some of the servicing implications. Harvey's going to go back, talk more about the transition. I will talk about the evaluation or the analyzing the differences. I'll talk about specifically for that mid-sized lender. Again, we're obviously MCT is focused historically on that as it relates to agency delivery on that mid-sized lender. And we'll talk about the differences of a mid-sized lender that might still execute to large aggregators, and how we expect those executions to kind of be bifurcated. Harvey will talk about UMBS alignment, and then Sophie will bring it home with kind of the Freddie Mac training materials. So Harvey, if you'd like to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And of course, I think we're all used to this. My dog started barking literally right as you said that, so I apologize for that. But thanks to Phil, and thanks to the MCT team to have us participate in the webinar, and certainly appreciate everyone taking time to join in. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the prime differences between cash and guarantor that sellers should consider. We'll kind of go over a high level. In the time we have, we could spend a lot of time talking about it, but just want to give you some taste for some of the differences, and just mention that it's going to be different for each seller. And so we'll try and touch some of the highlights, but obviously to continue the conversation and maybe get a little bit more specific about the guarantor option for you, I'd encourage you, and I'll promote this throughout, to reach out to your Freddie Mac account executive or MCT rep to kind of further the discussion. So, give you a high level view of things, and hopefully follow up with discussions further. So just a little clarification. When we talk about guarantor, and I'll try to be jargon free, it's hard, but when we talk about guarantor, we're talking about the issuance of securities. So you might hear them referred to as MBS, sort of generically. Most recently, the past couple of years, we've moved to the uniform mortgage-backed securities, or UMBS, but we talk about guarantor, that's the Freddie Mac term for the issuance of securities. So to kind of get into the high-level differences, first is sort of how that loan price is determined between cash and guarantor. So for cash, to find the loan price, you would go into Loan Selling Advisor, we call LSA. You can run a rate sheet based on a product, note rate, and the commitment period, the date by which you would deliver the loan to us. And you'll see the price for that loan displayed sort of in a percentage. I might say 101 or what have you. And that's the price times the loan amount that would be the price you get for that loan for that commitment period and product. I will say that, I'll note that some loans will be subject to what we call loan level price adjusters, LLPAs. We've referred to them as delivery fees. They're listed in Exhibit 19 in our guide. And these are additional fees charged based on characteristics of the loan. So the final proceeds you'd see from cash would be netted. The LLPAs would be netted against the loan price, which would be your final proceeds on the loan. And I'll mention LLPAs are the same for cash or guarantor. It's just how they're paid is just a little bit different. On the guarantor side, there's a little bit more math involved. To find the final loan price, you've got to perform a computation using some of the components of guarantee fee that Freddie Mac provides. So we provide you with a guarantee fee, which is the fee we charge for the credit guarantee. We provide you with buy-up and buy-down ratios for by product and for the settlement month. We'll talk a little bit more about those later and how they fit into the execution. But for guarantor, you have the option of taking that guarantee fee and increasing it. In other words, paying a higher guarantee fee over time in exchange for payment from Freddie Mac, or you could buy it down. In other words, pay less G fee over time in exchange for paying a fee to Freddie Mac, simply converting sort of the yield to price. And with guarantor, you have the option of managing that. And in addition, so the last component would be, in addition to LLPAs, as we talked about, would be the UMBS price based on the product and coupon that you're going to deliver. And that is obviously something you would get through a relationship with a dealer. That's not a price that Freddie Mac provides for a guarantor. And all those price components are, again, part of LSA. You would log in, run a guarantor rate sheet. You'd see all the fees associated. And again, I think we'll be walking through some of the price calculation in a minute, but it's important to understand, again, the difference. Cash pricing from Freddie Mac includes the underlying UMBS price, in addition to other credit pricing in the all-in price. And again, guarantor, if you're going to go that way, you need to source that UMBS from broker dealer network for if your intention is to trade that security. So cash is all in. Guarantor, there's a few components of math to do. One other difference to consider as we talked a little bit about buy-ups and buy-downs is a little bit of pooling flexibility. You have the ability to optimize pooling of your loans. For example, if you were inclined to retain excess servicing or use our buy-ups or buy-downs as we talked about. So the way guarantor pools are issued, they're issued in 0.5% increments. So you have a 2, a 2.5, a 3 coupon. So for a given note rate, you may have the option of putting that into 2 different securities. And obviously the securities have a different price. One could be a buy-up, could be a buy-down. You could retain. You have additional flexibility, and I think David's going to speak to the MSR retention in a little bit. And then another one is the mandatory aspect of a cash commitment versus sort of guarantor, which is optional. We do offer a best efforts program in our cash through a cash process, but the majority is mandatory. So when you take down a cash commitment that's mandatory, if there's no delivery or under delivery by the commitment expiration date, you'd be subject to a pair off for under delivery outside of tolerance. Like securities, pair offs can be two ways. You could be charged, or you could be paid for the pair off, but you would be subject to that. With guarantor, because we're not providing the asset price, if you took down a guarantor contract with Freddie Mac, there's no obligation to deliver against that guarantor contract. Having said that, if you are going to sell that pool forward through a dealer, most certainly that is going to be a guarantor, mandatory delivery to them, and you'd be subject to their terms of pair off for under delivery outside of tolerance. And again, that's mainly because in a cash pricing, we are the ones providing the asset price and taking on the price risk. So in order to provide the most competitive price, it's a mandatory commitment. In addition to some of the pricing differences, I think it's important to consider some of the operational requirements. And again, won't go into a whole lot of detail with this, but some are that you'd have to create a Fedwire account to receive the securities from Freddie Mac. In cash, you're getting wired funds. Here, you're getting a security. Also, security settlement and accounting process work a little different than in cash, because in cash you're receiving proceeds from us. In guarantor, you're receiving those proceeds from the broker dealer. So those funds for that won't come from us. And again, David was going to do a little bit of deeper dive on servicing in a few minutes. One last thing to talk about is security settlement calendar. So it's a calendar put out by SIFMA. It's an acronym, and off the top of my head can't remember what it is, but it is SIFMA. And what you may have heard referred to are good delivery dates, or Reg A settlement dates. Those are for a security that you would trade for Reg settle. The dealer would expect that security to be delivered to them on the Reg settlement date. For example, September, the Reg A settlement, the 30-year fixed rate settlement, is September 14th. So that's the day in a typical trade that a dealer would expect that security to be wired. You don't have to settle a security on that date. In the past, in the way back, it was really expected that there was, everything would settle on those dates, but that's not the case anymore. You can settle what we would call off-reg settlement dates. We will allow you to settle any Freddie Mac business day of the month for guarantor. Now, so that some of the reasons why folks like cash is they can settle constantly throughout the month, and so for guarantor, you can also do that. Now, there may be price differences between a reg and an off-reg settlement. I'm not as close to that as maybe you are, Phil. So I'm wondering if you could expand on, how off-reg UMBS pricing looks compared to reg settle, and any advice you may have for sellers who might contemplate using off-reg settlements to manage their fundings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And first off, that was a great summary, Harvey. Really appreciate it. So for those of MCT clients that are on the line that are, of the size here that are going to be kind of pushed towards the MBS, most of you have been securitizing on the Ginnie side. And look, from an execution standpoint, I am oversimplifying a little bit here, but at the end of the day, from a execution standpoint on specified settles, that's really it's kind of the same deal. You're going to be like today, if you were settling today, you would be basically a late August settle, but that would be the dealer terminology. But just we were talking about this with dealers this morning, because again, to be clear, majority of our clients on the agency side are still selling to the cash window. But just and they confirmed that the it's really just, as you guys know, a carry calculation, right, of the pay up, that comes off of the versus the settlement date. So it's basically just taking the roll that occurs, that's on the screen, and paying you up the days prior to. So it's pay up off of September, even though that it's a late settle in August, or an early settle in September, if you're going to do like a September 2nd settlement, or something like that. As Harvey said, those of you that are used to doing this with the Class C, you're used to doing this about a week later, for reg settle. Reg settle for Class A, is going to be, like Harvey said, 14th of the month, September, sometime, usually around, on average, the 12th of the month. But again, look, we'll get into some of those details a little bit later. Harvey, you mentioned the subject of servicing remittance differences between cash and guarantor. And I think it's a good time to take a moment to discuss the servicing considerations, related to both the operations and the MSR valuations. So David, if you want to take it away, with respect to the MSR valuation, that'd be great.
Sure, that'd be great. And I apologize if there's some background noise in advance, and try to find a quiet place at the airport, but we'll see how it goes. So when you're looking at servicing considerations for cash versus MBS, a couple of things to consider. First of all, on the remittance side, the good news is that with Freddie Mac, there's really no impact here, since both cash and MBS are scheduled actual. So no real changes there. So if you've not been used to that, then we can look at that in more detail with you, kind of go through that, to kind of walk through that. But the good news is that for the remittance side, for Freddie, both scheduled actual, for both MBS and cash. The next consideration is really around the buy down decisioning, and the real issue here is around the buy up side, and whether you want to consider retaining or whether you want to sell to Freddie. And I think this is the place where it's important to try to look for your own value and have your own tools to tell you what you think it's worth. Obviously, there are going to be grids that Freddie gives you to take a look at on what the multiples are, but we're finding that it's very important for folks to understand the value of their own servicing to help them make a more educated decision in this particular area. And then on the delivery side, the good news also here is that for either concurrent or subsequent delivery, both are available. I think you can check with your broker dealers for any more questions in particular, but those are kind of the, I would check with your broker dealer for any particular questions, but both options are available. So really pretty straightforward there. And then we might want to look at, on the valuation side that we were talking about, I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so from MCT, we have something called MSR Live. And the issue of valuation keeps coming up more and more all the time, understanding what the value of your portfolio really is. And so MSR Live is a tool that does that, and it's accessible from your laptop, and you can load your data in, and once you do that, you can look at the value of that data anytime throughout the month that you choose. And you can also slice it up any way that you like. You can look at just one portion of your business. You can look at it from one area of your company. You can look at it really at any kind of perspective that you would like, and be able to get that value back instantaneously right on your laptop. The other thing that it provides along with that is it provides a rate shock analysis, which in today's environment, particularly over the last several weeks, and of course this is Phil's specialty, but really you can see the impact of what rates will do to the value of your book, and we'll go in increments up and down the value chain, so you can see exactly how a half or a quarter movement in rate affects the value of your book. And then the other thing that's really valuable on it, we've seen a lot of help with, is I know a lot of folks have been worried somewhat about margin compression over time. It's eased a little bit lately, but we have something that's available to you called custom grids. And these grids are are based on the value of your MSR specifically. So instead of using a generic value that you might use from the industry, what we're seeing a lot of our clients doing is taking a look at both sides of that, looking at what their MSR specific value is worth and what the generic value is worth, really to understand whether they want to keep that loan or not. So those are probably some highlights on the servicing side. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or anything else you'd like for me to address.
No, Dave, that's great. Thanks for taking us through the operational and MSR evaluation considerations there. We've talked about the high level differences between cash and guarantor, Harvey. Maybe we can move to the topic of kind of which lenders are the best candidates for this conversion, and the process from moving to cash to guarantor, and a question on everyone's mind is can a lender participate in both at the same time?
Thanks, Bill. Excellent questions. Going to go through them one at a time. I think when I think about suitability of going cash versus guarantor, I'm really kind of thinking about what fits best with the seller. Each lender is different. Each lender should evaluate the executions and figure out what fits best with how they plan on doing business. There's lots of differences obviously between lenders with whether it's funding costs, different structures, different business strategies and objectives. We talked about servicing retention, for example, as one where if that's a strategy, maybe guarantor is a better fit. So it's really hard to describe the ideal lender to move. It really is what's the best fit. Other than the limitations you described regarding the PSPA, it's sort of a lender by lender view. And only the lenders can determine if and when it's appropriate. The flexibilities we talked about, if they're of value to the lender and you're able to manage the operational differences, then it's certainly worth exploring. I will again plug the valuable resources that you have via MCT and via Freddie Mac to help you guide you down the path if your intention is to move to guarantor. I would say if you have experience in the past executing securities, whether you've done that, in your shop or you have other people who have done that, it certainly is worthwhile to explore the option with Freddie Mac. There are, if you have experience with Fannie Mae, there are some differences. So, we should certainly make sure that you're up to speed on those differences. And we have tons of resources for lenders who want to transition. I know Sophie will touch on those in a little bit. But I would say even with past experience in guarantor delivery, it's not something that's gonna happen overnight. You're not gonna suddenly today, be a cash seller and tomorrow, just switch to guarantor. I would give yourself realistically a month or two to convert. Maybe more if it's new to you. And who knows if you require system updates or changes or anything like that, certainly that can add a timeline to it. So I just want to be realistic about, if you're thinking about converting, give yourself some time. And again, I'm going to plug the resources that we have to assist you in converting if that's the way you want to go, including test pools, so you can submit test pools to make sure everything works correctly, the pipes are working. So I just want to be realistic about that. Digging a little further in the guarantor program, we have a couple different pooling options for sellers. One is the single issue pools, and the others are multi-lender, and they're very aptly named. A single issuer pool is a pool that is issued with loans from a single seller, single issuer. It'll have your name on it. It'll be traded with just those loans. For a fixed rate single issuer pool, the minimum pool size to issue is $1 million. So if you're considering doing a single issue pool, you need $1 million of loans that would fit into that pool based on product and note rate range and coupon. We also have a multi-lender pool, which again, aptly named, it's a pool of, where many lenders can contribute, becomes very, very large pool, and they are available for all of our fixed rate products, including 30-year super conforming only pools, and it will encompass all the main production coupons. You're probably not going to find, off the run coupons available there. Those probably be, if you had those, would be have to go single issue, but it is available. And I think the reason I mentioned that is the minimum contribution into a multi-lender is $1,000. So it starts to become a little bit like cash in terms of the minimum commitment amount. So those are both available to you. And so we talked a little bit about the differences between the two executions, but I would like to highlight some similarities. Again, as I mentioned, cash and guarantor pools can fund on any business day of the month. We talked about that. Guarantor commitment periods, our typical remittance cycle is 5 days. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can do a commitment in as little as 1 day using our multi-lender pool using Gold Rush option. And of course, as I mentioned, multi-lender pools have a minimum commitment size of $1,000, which is the same as cash. So, getting to the last bullet, which Phil, you kind of set up as something of interest to folks, understandably. And I'll say that our general view is that we look for lenders to kind of pick one path and go with it. So if you decide to move to guarantor as your primary execution, you will find that your cash execution will be, let's say, less compelling. So as not to create a price arbitrage between two executions, at the same time. So if you go guarantor, you'll get guarantor execution. Cash will be back. Everyone has access to cash. So you would have access to cash, but the execution may not stack up. It'll be available for, if you had a couple loans to be delivered, or loans that maybe aren't eligible for single or multi-lender pools. But our overall guidance is pick one and go with it. Now, having said that, there are certain situations where, having access to both cash and guarantor is warranted. And there's a lot of those scenarios that we could talk to, and each, seller might have a different one. So I'll just kind of repeat what I said earlier, is that, what really is important is what's going to fit with your needs. So we are open to talking about options where cash and guarantor are compelling executions if that fits your needs, but we're also going to make sure that, we're not going to be providing a competitive competing outlet with both. And hopefully that's a good explanation. Again, I will promote the access you have to a Freddie Mac account exec or MCT rep to talk about that further. So hopefully, Phil, that addresses that sort of hot button question.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's great. And look, it's right to the heart of the of the matter here as we talk about this imposed need to transition for some lenders. That's what we're talking about, right? If for all you lenders on the line, if we could execute to both with complete, no issues whatsoever. MCT, there's frankly what you pay MCT for, right, is to arbitrage your buyers. I mean, at the end of the day, right, we're getting the best execution, and so understanding that both Fannie and Freddie have to protect where their where their margins are going to be. They can't get continuously arbitraged, and we'll talk about that later. But I think that is important to highlight that, what Harvey just said, Freddie is open to, working with you on that. And I think that's a fear that a lot of, lenders had. For those lenders who might have been doing, I use that 250 million a month number. Maybe you're in a state like I am in California where that low loan balance spec is pretty few and far between, right? And so to the problem, of course, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you get that $80,000 loan, that's great. At the cash side, you just pick it off and you get a nice pickup on that, that low loan balance 85K loan program. On the securitization side, you've got either a volume or a unit number to hit, and that obviously can be problematic depending upon where you're where you're originating from. And so that's that is a key, the fact that Freddie, is looking to work with you on that is really great. So yeah, great. Again, great overview, Harvey. And maybe we can just, now that we're on pricing, maybe we can go into how Freddie Mac actually goes about pricing guarantor versus cash to its lenders.
Sure. So the cash pricing that is the result that you touched on a little earlier. It's sort of a combination of the credit pricing that kind of Freddie Mac provides, and the asset price based on the product, note rate, and commitment period that you're seeking for cash. So that asset price, you can think of as that market price for a UMBS security that roughly corresponds to the commitment period that you're taking down in cash. So it's all combined together. We do all the behind the scenes sort of best exing and math that we talked about for guarantor, and provide you with that price. The guarantor, again, as we talked about, provides a little bit more flexibility, puts pooling and best execution into your hands, and allowing you to kind of determine how to optimize your execution of your pipeline. So I will emphasize, and this kind of gets back to the point we were just talking about of arbitraging execution. Cash pricing is dynamic. So obviously the TBA UMBS market can move. Some days it can be pretty volatile. So if you go to take down a commitment or look at a rate sheet for cash right now, and then go back, and re-pull that rate sheet in a couple hours, that price could be different. Changes with the market, not just the underlying asset price, but the values we embed in there for some of the servicing values that get embedded in that credit pricing. So that moves dynamically. For guarantor, the credit pricing terms, the G fees, the buy-ups and buy-downs are provided on a monthly basis and are fixed, so they don't change for the entirety of the settlement month. So you've got a dynamic aspect of pricing and a sort of a fixed aspect of pricing. So if you think about if the market gets volatile, moves one way or the other, that could make for the same loan, make our cash pricing look much better than guarantor, or vice versa. Hence the concern about arbitrage and not typically allowing both executions to be a primary execution. So hopefully that helps. I think of it, I was trying to think of a good analogy. I was thinking about, if you need to go buy a birthday cake, my preferred option is to just go to the store and pick up whatever they've got. That's just me. Some people might want to buy all the ingredients and have the flexibility to make it themselves. That would not be a good option for me. So, cash is sort of, you go, you buy the fully baked cake, and that's what you got. Guarantor is more like, getting the ingredients, putting it together with the flexibility that guarantor provides. I hope, Phil, that's a good analogy. It's the best one I could think of.
Yeah, no, No, that's great. And I think, circling back here, because it is a big question for, for our clients, our mutual clients, and all lenders on the line. I think it shows that, talking to Freddie, talking to your rep, having them talk to, the Harvey's team, I think is important because, I think what Harvey's saying is, obviously, if they're continuously getting arbitrage, that obviously doesn't work, right? And Harvey went into some of the details on the, on the fluidity of pricing. There's also, aspects of spec payups that don't exist, that the agency Freddie is giving you a payup on what's considered straight TBA production, but might be actually worth a spec. And so the one that comes to mind that's of good value that is not in the cash window spec payups at the agencies is a Florida spec. And so, just understanding and working, with Freddie on that, I think it sounds like is definitely valuable. Harvey, I think it's important for lenders to understand the operational differences as well on the execution. Um, uh, you know, the securitization process and the delivery process, has obviously timing elements to it. Maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Phil. You're correct. There are some operational, steps in Guarantor that may not be there for cash. One of the things I sort of touched on is the settlement cycle for Guarantor. Because of the nature of issuing securities, we have a standard settlement cycle of 5 days, which means that 5 business days prior to the date you want to settle your security, lots of things need to happen, including edits on loans need to be cleared in our LSA system, doc custodian certifications, among other things. Everything needs to be buttoned up 5 days prior to the security settlement. We do offer some tighter windows for that. I mentioned our Gold Rush program, which you can do 4, 3, or even 1 for the multi-lender pool. But those are things to consider. And I will say we have a settlement calendar available on our website for each month, which walks you through specifically, what's the reg settlement date, when's my delivery date for the various reg settlement dates, and then you can also kind of do the math. I think in LSA you'll also see those dates in there where you have to make a final delivery. So there's a lot of details in loan selling advisor requirements, and too much for me to go through, and I'll admit I'm not the expert on loan selling details, but I do again want you to know that we have lots of online tools to explain and walk you through all the different operational steps. I mentioned before that converting from cash to guarantor is not something that happens overnight, and so this is one of those ways that you want to be sure that you are on top of this. And the reason for that is if you miss a date, let's say you get inside of your settlement cycle and Gold Rush wouldn't be available for whatever reason, or things are delayed, it could mean delaying or failing on your delivery to the dealer that you've traded with, and that's going to cost you money, if not a pair off of that trade. So it's really important to make sure that you understand all the various dates, that you're in touch with your, not just your Freddie Mac account exec, but we have folks that work specifically on LSA to understand the requirements and point you to the training that I think Sophie will touch on a little bit. So that's very important to understand those components and be on top of that before you jump into the guarantor market. And so Phil, if I can ask, I believe MCT can also help lenders with the settlement process and provide some support in broker-dealer relationships. So I have that right?
Absolutely. No, appreciate the question, Harvey. Obviously, we can provide dealer relationships. Just I had I'm looking here. We're running short on time, so I'm going to skip through this slide real quick. Basically, this is we have an agency cash versus MBS or guarantor comparison tool here that's available to all of our clients. Basically just the key that you want to understand is that Harvey has said before that you have to execute on your execution in the world of MBS, and what that means, of course, is you have to get all of these specified pay-ups that exist in the market, some of which are very valuable. You have to be able to get those from your dealers, and just keep that in mind that when cash window whole loan conduits are 50% of issuance, there's substantial volume behind those. So not that you need massive securities to get a pay up from your dealer, but you are going to need $1 million minimum or a 20 or a 25 loan minimum. And you talk to your dealers and talk to your MCT trader about that. But that to be clear on this transition, that's where it becomes not Freddie's problem anymore. It's more your your decision with the dealer. So definitely talk to your MCT account executive or your MCT trader more about this comparison tool. So just in the interest of time here, like I said, I'm going to skip over that. The last thing I want to discuss with you, Harvey, is kind of the impact of the move to UMBS for sellers, and really what that means for those who participate in Guarantor. And maybe you can talk a little bit about Freddie Mac's support of UMBS pricing parity.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I do want to mention that I think it's important to talk through real quick. We've always had a focus on how our securities perform in the market. We talk a lot about prepayment speeds. Back those who've been around before 2019 might remember there were two different securities, Freddie Mac PC and Fannie Mae MBS. In June, we went to a single security. So there's one security, UMBS, and we've always focused on security prepayment performance, but certainly the UMBS reinforced the need to be on top of that. So really what we're trying to avoid a scenario where an investor or dealer might say, hey, I want to differentiate the pricing of a Freddie Mac issued UMBS versus Fannie Mae. So what does that mean for you if you're a guarantor seller? You have additional flexibility for pooling. As I mentioned, you could take a note rate and pool it into one coupon or the other. We do pay attention on how those pools are formed, and if we were to see some misalignment, meaning let's say one note rate was pulled one way with us and another way with Fannie, or something to that effect, where we feel like it could cause concerns about prepayments, it's something we would address with sellers and talk through and kind of understand why there may be misalignment, and we'd certainly work with the guarantor sellers to manage that. So I think it's important to highlight that. Again, not something new, but as if you transitioned over to guarantor, I think it's important to be clear. These are, with that flexibility that you have, there's some additional focus on making sure that that we're aligned from both for our UMBS securities.
Well, thanks, Harvey. And definitely want to turn it over now to Sophie from Freddie Mac's Client Education Services, just to give a quick overview of Freddie Mac's Guarantor training materials, because I think that's really something our clients are interested in.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Hopefully everyone can hear me clearly. These are great conversations, and to support these discussions, there are a couple of items we'd like to share with you on Freddie Mac's learning resources. So the page you're viewing outlines the Sell for Securities webpage. and I highly recommend bookmarking it because it contains the tools and links you'll need to transact business with Guarantor, especially for those sellers who are either new to Guarantor or may already be approved but need to get up and running. So you'll notice on the left side of the slide, I've highlighted the 3 Guarantor programs, which are fixed rate, whack arm Guarantor, and multi-lender swap. So if you want to learn more about those programs, the pooling options and minimum requirements, click those links and they'll get you what you need. Now, over to the right are a couple of our learning tools. These are relatively new, and I don't mean to be racing through my speech here, so my spiel. So let me slow down. The 3 items are the timeline to get ready to sell for securities. I think both Phil and Harvey touched on it. So this timeline gives you or gives customers an idea of how long it's going to take them to get ready to sell through Guarantor. So if they're brand spanking new, it puts into reality all the tasks associated and general timeframes for those tasks. To accompany that or to complement it, we have the Sell for Securities roadmap. And what the roadmap does for the user is it takes those tasks and clearly identifies each of those steps and links the user to training and tools that will help them and assist them with those steps. So the roadmap is a great little, just a great tool to help you feel comfortable in whether you've completed particular tasks or not, what you need to do next. So it takes you through chronological order. We also have, and it's not highlighted here, we have a roadmap checklist. So if you're a checklist kind of person, you can download it and then check off the items as you complete them. Down on the bottom, that's marked all-in-one. So that all-in-one really refers to the toolkit. The toolkit, I can't say enough about it, but that's another item I highly recommend people bookmark because it is your all-in-one source for Guarantor. It will link you to not only the guide, to training, to other complementary web pages. So it's a great tool for everyone in the shop, whether you're in secondary doing the pooling or if you're in loan delivery and involved in loan selling advisor and getting those loans through the system. So that toolkit is really going to come in handy. And all the tutorials that you link to from it don't require passwords. You can just launch them and they will play right away. So let's go to the next slide. And also on the Sell for Securities page is a section up at the top of the page is where it will be located, is a section that'll be titled Tools to Help You Execute. So there are quite a few items there. And instead of going through every single one, because most are self-explanatory, there are a couple that I'd like to highlight. We talked about, or I mentioned, the Sell for Securities checklist. So again, this checklist works in tandem with the roadmap and that timeline. It's designed for those who like checklists. Further down, we have the settlement dates for securities calendar. So Harvey talked about this. So the settlement dates for Guarantor work differently from cash. If you're selling through cash today, you know, as soon as your delivery requirements are met on a single loan within the contract, you fund. With Guarantor, it's different. Everything needs to be ready at one time, and nothing's going to move forward if even a single loan is not complete. So all those delivery requirements, including getting those notes certified, must be completed by the final delivery date. So there's this new field in loan selling advisor called the final delivery date, and that's when the delivery folks have to complete everything, clearing your edits, notes are certified. There's also another piece about assigning security wire instructions. So unlike cash, your wire instructions are hard-coded in the system. With Guarantor, you have, or the seller must go in and create their wire instructions. And that tells Freddie Mac where to wire the security. So I'm sharing a lot there, but the settlement dates for securities calendar goes into when you need to complete that delivery. And then I just went on into other aspects there. Let me move on. The daily ACH calendar, again, another difference between cash and guarantor. With cash, we fund you, we net out the delivery fees at closing or at settlement. With guarantor, it's different. We wire you, uh, your security, and then 5 days later, we go in and sweep your ACH account for delivery fees and or credits. Moving along in this list, and I'm sorry, I skipped something. So the daily ACH calendar gives you the calendar days of when we'd go and sweep your account in relation to your settlement date. So that does happen 5 business days after the settlement date. So the next item here in the list is a guarantor pricing and contracts page. So this web page links you to tools that'll assist you when delivering loans through Loan Selling Advisor. So it contains your specification files if you're importing your contracts, for your rate sheets and exporting data. It also links you to training and other resources. We have multi-lender pool posting information, and then is your information on remittance cycles for guarantor. So again, this goes hand in hand with your settlement date. And Harvey mentioned the standard settlement cycle. So the settlement cycle is a period after which your delivery requirements are met, and then the loans sit there until settlement occurs. So the cycles vary from 5 business days, which is standard, all the way down to 1 business day, and that 1 business day is only for multi-lender. So the last item here is a buy up, buy down calculator. So if you want to use a calculator to help you calculate the buy up, buy down amounts, this calculator is super handy. What I want to plug here is if you're delivering loan level buy ups and buy downs, remember that ULDD file must contain 2 specific fields for buy up and buy down. If those fields are missing, you won't be able to allocate the loan to the contract. So please visit these tools. I'm going to conclude now. I thank you for your time, and I encourage you to visit our websites and reach out for more information. So with that said, again, thank you, and back to Phil.
Well, thank you, Sophie. That was really, really valuable. And again, those links to the Freddie Mac Guarantor training will be included in the webinar materials that we're going to send out after the conclusion of the webinar. I should have said this earlier because I think it's pretty obvious probably to most of our clients on the line, but we do have some clients that are agency sellers that are not approved with Freddie. In this entire conversation of caps, the caps are per agency, right? So not because Freddie's on the line here, it's an absolute, there's zero reason that you wouldn't get approved with Freddie. But there's also other reasons, even if it wasn't a mathematical, certainty that it is better for your execution to be approved at Freddie. With the cap structure, the way it's set. Also, that flexibility, I think, is going to be very interesting. And again, understanding that Freddie cannot get arbitraged over time. I do think there's good working with Freddie. I think you can have flexibility on some of those spec programs. And again, won't speak for Freddie there, but they will be able to speak with you about that. So I should have said that at the outset. But obviously, if you're not approved at Freddie, get approved at Freddie. Definitely no brainer. Look, David, we're about out of time, but I wanted to just give you 60 seconds If you have any kind of final thoughts on MSR considerations, because that is a big, that is a differentiator when you move from cash to guarantor.
Yeah, certainly as you consider that, thank you, Phil, for that. I appreciate it. And certainly as you look at a buy-up and you look whether you're considering to retain that excess servicing, whether to sell it to Freddie, that's really when your expertise in to really evaluate your own business, come up with the value of that MSR for yourself, becomes a critical element. And that's certainly something that we can do. MSR Live is a tool that is customizable to your book of business. We discuss business assumptions with you. So we put your business assumptions and your servicing cost in, and we ultimately track that with your loan performance over time. So you end up with a tool that reflects very carefully the value of your own servicing. So I think in that particular area, we could be very helpful. So we'll look forward to any questions or engagements people might have over that topic. Thank you, Phil.
Well, thank you, David. And yeah, we ran over time as I expected, because we had there's so much content here, and I just really want to thank David and Sophie and especially Harvey for all of the good information. And like I said, MCT and Freddie will be reaching out to you with regards to those of you that had questions. There were a lot of questions that came up, and we'll definitely follow up there. And then please reach out to either your Freddie Mac representative or your MCT AE for any further questions. And really appreciate your time. Thank you.